And it's intercepted. It's intercepted by number 22. That's Clifton. He's got the left edge. Turns on the Jets. Still on his feet. Touchdown, Calaveras. What a play. Up to a running back. That's Ferrante over to the right side. He comes back up the middle. He's got room. One man to beat. He turns on the Jets. There he goes. Touchdown, Calaveras. What a play. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to Let's Talk Football with Coach Val. I'm your host, Gil Valtierra, the voice of Calaveras football. This episode, we dive into a new topic, which is managing the game of football, and I cannot be more excited to have my special guest here with me today, longtime Calaveras head football coach, Mr. Jason Weatherby. Coach, you can see everybody's excited to see you. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate this, and I understand it's going quite well. So,
thank you. Appreciate that, Coach. You know, we've known each other for a long time, spent a lot of time in the film room, spent a lot of time on the sidelines together. Obviously, here in Calaveras County, you're a staple. Everyone knows who you are. But for those listeners out there that are not from our county, why don't you fill them in a little bit on your background, where you grew up, where you went to school, all that good stuff, when you ended up back at Calaveras coaching?
Certainly. When I was an elementary school player on Pop Warner, my dad was a coach, and my dad quit coaching after my 7th grade year. And at that point, we had a different coach that came in, and I was 185 pounds, and the weight limit was 140 at the time. There was no way with my body I could have lost 45 pounds. And the coach at the time actually told me that I didn't have enough heart to play football.
Wow.
So I kind of took that to heart as I continued. And as I went into high school, I played JV as a freshman, did quite well. As a sophomore, they brought me up to varsity for the playoffs. I ended up earning a starting job at nose tackle. I was inside linebacker and a fullback. And we lost 2 games in my varsity high school career and never made playoffs. One because of a flip of a coin, and the next one was because of the format change of the playoffs. They went from like 16 teams down to 8. So I've always had that little chip on my shoulder because of that.
Yeah.
And it's always kind of bothered me. My high school coach was Mike Flock, which he was a great coach, taking absolutely nothing away from him. And then my senior year, I got pulled into the All-Star game, and I was being recruited by some pretty decent schools, some good-sized schools. Fresno State was talking to me. Stanford was talking to me. Cal. I went down to a Cal game on a visit. Went to San Jose State on a visit. And during that time, toward the end of the season, I got hyperextended my knee. So as soon as my knee went out, a kid rolled into it. A good friend of mine, Jim Mulhart from Linden, rolled into my knee, and I thought I was invincible, so I just stuck my knee out there to stop him and to basically drive my knee into him. And he rolled up on it, and the back of my knee hit the ground behind me, and you see it in the film. And so that was the end of my high school career, but also the end of my college recruiting because they quit calling. Places quit calling. The only place that continued to call me and talk to me and see how rehab and everything else was going was UC Davis, and that was Coach Jim Soker and Bob Biggs and the crew down there. Well, so I went and played in an all-star game, and as soon as the all-star game was over, I ended up being the MVP of the game, and all of a sudden, Fresno State's calling me, wanting me to come there, and UC Davis came to watch the game, and at that point right there, I knew I was going to go to Davis.
Right.
But what I didn't know is the degree of competition that's at the college level.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start thinking about it, I'm this 18-year-old kid that's everything that's gone right in my career up till this point has been great. But then you go down to UC Davis and you're playing against guys that are 23, 24, that have been in the weight room for 4 years, that have been coached up for 4 years by college coaches. And it was just like a rude awakening for me for that. And I went in there probably a little fatter than I should have been.
Mm-hmm.
So they moved me to defensive line. And at the end of my freshman year, I didn't want to play defensive line anymore. I didn't play on the varsity team. At that point, they had a freshman team that would play JCs. And so my position coach, Jeff Ramsey, said, you can play wherever you want. And I didn't really understand that then, but I kind of understand it better now. At UC Davis under Coach Soker, we had about 95 freshman players come into the team. And so I was one of 95. So it really didn't matter where I went. I wasn't going to play till my junior or senior year.
Wow.
And so at the end of the season, I lost some weight. I got a little faster. I told him I wanted to play fullback. So the next year I redshirted and played on the scout team for the entire year. I don't think I ever missed a practice. Then we went to junior year, and there was 2 guys that were still ahead of me that were trading time as first team. So anytime we'd get ahead or something like that, then they would put me in and I'd be able to play a little bit at fullback. And what I didn't realize is the number of players that came in as freshmen that were no longer players as a junior or a senior. And I finally realized that my senior year, there was 7 people that were on the freshman team with me that actually made it through the 4 years. And that was their way of cutting people.
Only 7 out of 95.
Out of 95.
Wow.
So their idea was, we won't pay them any attention. If they hang around long enough, they're going to play for us because they're going to be good enough. If they don't, then so be it. Mm-hmm. We're going to make do with what we get and what we end up growing. And we used to call it a weeding out process.
Right.
And looking back on that, I can see where that would really work for a school like Davis, because once you're in there, the education that you get is going to be invaluable to what you're going to learn on the football field.
Sure.
So this was under Coach Jim Soker, and he was an amazing coach. I don't think I ever heard him raise his voice, but maybe a couple times through the entire 4-year experience down there, 5-year experience down there. So that philosophy came with me when I went from there back up to Calaveras High School. When I first got to Calaveras High School, myself and Clyde Weddle coached the freshman team, and we coached that for 4 years. And that was fun. It was, I don't know, I still had a little chip on my shoulder, so I used to play against them, but I didn't have pads on.
Now what year was this when you took over the freshman team? This is at Calaveras?
Yeah, 1989 to 1993 are the 4 years that I did that.
So you graduated from Davis?
In 83.
Gotcha.
Oh, no, in 87. Okay. I finished my last season. The following year, I forgot to tell you this, the following year I was asked to coach the freshman team at UC Davis. So at that point, we still had it. So we went around and I coached running backs, and we went and played JC teams. So at that point, I was still coaching, but I was getting a lot more experience because I was in coaches' meetings and all that type of thing.
Right.
So when I came back, it wasn't really contingent on my coaching, but they really needed a freshman coach because there was enough players back then to where you had 35 on a freshman team, 30 on a JV, and then 50 on a varsity team.
Right.
So the necessity was there, and I said I'd do it, so I did. And I don't remember what my record was in those 4 years, but I enjoyed that a lot. I ended up getting married toward the end of that, and I got married in 92, and in 93, my oldest son Austin was born. And that's when I knew I had to step back and focus on my family and work on that as much as I could. Because at that point, we didn't really have. We had a mobile, not a mobile home, but a manufactured home on the land that we had, but we didn't have power. I had to be home more to make sure we had water, all those type of things. So I had to serve my family more. So the next 4 years, I didn't coach at all, and I missed it. But in 97, I think it was, when Gary Stepanski stepped down and retired, the position came open, and there weren't a lot of applicants for it. And I went in to the principal at the time and said, "Hey, I know we're not getting a lot of people for this, but I would do it if you absolutely made me. If nobody else was coming forward." And then we got Roger Canepa, and so at that point, I went to Roger and I said, "Hey, I'd like to coach," and he said, "Okay, great, you're on." So from that point, we coached together for 10 years. And he is the absolute polar opposite of Jim Soker. I don't think there was a quiet day at practice ever.
Right.
And it was just a polar opposite. So the first couple of years were kind of culture shock, and then after that, it was like, okay, there's more to what he's doing than what I saw Soker doing. And Soker's philosophy and his Coach Soker's philosophy and his mannerisms works well with the school that he's at.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think they would have worked as well at the high school level. And I figured that out my first couple of years of coaching varsity. So I coached with Roger for 10 years, and then he told me he was leaving, and I felt like I was ready to take on the task of being head coach. So the AD agreed with me, said, "Okay, you're it." And the rest is history. I coached for...
And that was what, like 2008, right?
Yeah, 2007, 2008, so right around there.
Okay. I think I came on the year Roger left, or the year after that.
Nope, that was that year.
Right.
Because me and Scott and I got together and tried to put together a staff the best that we could.
Right.
And I remember you and he were friends at the time, and so that worked out well for a long time.
Yeah. So I always wondered, because of all the years I spent on the sideline with you, we spent a lot of time there, 10, 12 years at least. I always felt like you've always had that mild, even-keeled demeanor. Now I know where it comes from, right?
Yeah, there's times when I get fired up at the refs or whatever it is, but I've always tried.
But pretty
to
rare.
That.
Yeah, it's not your normal MO everyday kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think early in the head coaching career, I was more vocal than what I got toward the end of my career. Because toward the end of my career, I got to the point to where I'm running out of words. I'm running out of those pregame talks, those halftime talks, those fire 'em up talks and I knew when I started running out of those, it was time to retire.
Right. You can almost just kind of feel the odometer moving, I guess.
Yeah. And I'm trying to think of the word. The intensity that I could bring,
right,
wasn't nearly as focal in what I could do then.
Yeah, I felt like when I was done, I felt like it was if I wasn't fired up to come back, like, all right, the season's about to start, and I wasn't fired up and ready to go and kind of just take it on, and it was more like, here we go again. That's when I knew, like, okay, this is a sign here, and I got to start looking at it. So, yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
It's a lot of time commitment, so much time commitment, and that time can't be replaced, and especially when you're dealing with other things, like you said, with your family and all that good stuff.
Yeah, and we'll talk about this later too, but the off-season program beats you down too.
Yeah.
Trying to get kids there and
yeah, my wife would tell me, I go, football's just, in the fall. She was, yeah, right. She was, not for you coaches, it's not.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So speaking of that, Coach, let's move on. Let's dive into our topic about managing the game of football. For me, I've been an assistant, I've been position coaches, I've been a head coach, and it wasn't until I had to be a head coach that I started to realize the dynamics around having to manage staff, having to manage players. What was your strategy in managing both players and assistant coaches, having to deal with the dynamics of managing all of those people?
Well, I think the most successful coaches are going to say that they need to rely on the assistant coaches a lot during season and off season. And one of the things that I felt as I was going through my head coaching career, I felt like the amount of help that I would ask for from the assistant coaches went down because I just get tired of saying, oh, well, you want to do the weight room today. Oh, you want to, we need to practice this summer. We need to go to this 7-on-7 tournament or whatever it might be. It just got to the point to where I just said, okay, I'm going to do this with these kids, and that's going to be the end of it. That's something I wish I could go back and actually try to bring the assistant coaches into it more and motivate them more to be a part of the off season. The players themselves, I always felt like I had a pretty good relationship with them, and I felt like they could trust me. There was a couple times when it was tested. We had a player steal another kid's gloves and then the next day come out and wear them at practice, which is about as dumb as you can get. So that person was removed from the team, and that hurts. Anytime you eliminate a kid like that, they need football more than they don't need it.
Right.
And so when you do that, it wears me down personally. One of the things that, as I started managing the players, I always felt like I wanted these young men to become men that if I had a daughter, I would want my daughter to marry.
That's a good way of looking at it.
And so I treated them like that, but also tried to give them that little bit extra of the character coaching that happened. And when I became the head coach, they gave me seventh period, last period of the day with just my football players. And so the players 3 days a week would be in the weight room, and then 2 days a week would be in my classroom watching either film or doing character training. And that worked really well. We had some great volunteers that came in and presented to the team and talked to them about different things, and then we'd show them motivational videos and things like that. And I think for the most part, it was very successful.
I remember those. I think even assistant coaches kind of got reinvigorated when they sat through some of those.
Yeah, I think so too. It was a good program. Under Roger, he had a different philosophy toward those borderline kids, and I'd always try to bring those borderline kids over to it. But I think more of them didn't play football because of that than would have played football. I know when Roger was coach, we had some hoodlums. We had some kids that were in trouble a lot.
Right.
And he would work through that with them and really not penalize them, because he understood the fact that they're going to be better. They're going to be better off with football than they would be without.
Right.
Without football, they're going to be out causing trouble. And with football, at least he could manage them most of the time. Which
maybe try to help redirect all that energy. And
Yeah. And with me, I felt like they didn't want to come because he's going to try to make a saint out of me, or he's going to try to do this. You know? And so some of the players just wouldn't have played. I've had students or players from both Roger's time there and my time there that'll come back and thank me for the way I dealt with them.
Right.
And some of the Roger ones were me in their face screaming at them, send them to the locker room, go home because you're never going to get this.
Right.
And then gave him a second chance, and that same kid now is raising a family here in the community and doing a great job.
Yeah.
And then some of the other kids that went through the character training, excuse me, are realizing it at about the age of 23, 24, that was valuable. That's what they needed, but they didn't realize it at the time. And it's more valuable later in life than it is right away.
Right. Yeah, I can totally see that. I'll tell you what, I put in 24 years on the sideline, the last 13 of them at Calaveras High School, mostly under your leadership. And I can't tell you, I've learned so much from you, so I appreciate you for that. Scott Anderson, Manny Mosa, Doug Clark, yourself. I learned so much as far as not just the X's and O's, but the work ethic. You know, every Sunday, the meetings, the film, just the time and effort that all you guys were willing to put in. And so then I felt like, well, I've got to put just as much time and effort too. You know, that's what you learn as being a football player, right? You don't want to let your teammates down. You want to put in that energy just the way they're putting it in. And in other schools that I've coached at, it wasn't quite the same. So I learned a lot, and so I thank you for that.
Yeah, you forgot to mention Thursday night film too.
Thursday night film too. I think Scott Anderson led that one. So yeah, I learned a lot on that one. I learned a lot from Coach Clark, who Coach Clark taught me how to just be meticulous. Put so much time in that you're going to know. You won't be surprised at anything because you've already seen it. You know, and so he taught me a lot about that. So a lot of good stuff going on there, just from the coaches and that bleeding off into players and what they're doing in life. So it's always refreshing to talk to ex-players and see what they're doing. You see they're doing good things.
Yeah.
So when I was the head coach, I felt like one of the hardest tasks was making sure that we both had players and coaches sort of what they called sitting on the right seats on the bus, right? So we're all on the bus, but now I need to make sure we got the right guys in the right spots. What's your feeling around that philosophy? Because sometimes it's like, you know, a guy wants to play here, but that's not where the team needs him, or a coach wants to coach in a certain area, but that's not quite where you need him. Tell me how you had managed through that dynamic.
That was difficult because some of the kids thought they were either way better, or the parents thought they were way better than the places that would serve the team the best. And if you have somebody that's a first stringer and then you have somebody who's second string behind them that could fit the bill at guard or fit the bill someplace else better, but they didn't want to play there, so would their attitude take them to second string at the guard position? I'd try to get them to buy in most of the time, and if they didn't buy in, then they're better off as a second string. You know?
Right.
If they bought in and they wanted to contribute and they wanted to do what's best for the team, then they were all in. You knew they were all in, so they were in good shape.
Right.
So they would be able to serve the team better at that other position where they may have a starting job.
Right.
Tight end was always that kind of position.
Mm-hmm.
It was a borderline between being able to catch the ball and being an offensive tackle.
Right.
So we had some kids that could have played offensive tackle for us that were tight ends that did a good job, and we probably didn't use that tight end position as much as a receiver as we did as a blocker. So it's kind of, you know, making sure they're in the right seats, and means their attitudes need to be right about where they're at.
Right.
And coaches with the same thing.
Right.
I've asked coaches to coach outside of positions, and that's always been kind of difficult to manage, but they've always bought in to that position, and they've always enjoyed having new experiences too.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just you may not know anything about it, but you're going to learn something now. So it's just going to help you be a better, well-rounded coach later on down the road, right?
Yeah, that's for sure. And when I first read that question, I was thinking to myself, the bus, I hated riding the bus. I'm like, that was the most miserable thing ever. And I screamed at the kids when we got 30 minutes away from where when we got 30 minutes away from wherever the destination was, I'd make them shut up. They could not talk ever again. They'd be reading their ready sheets. They'd be, quietly talking about the game. It just drove me nuts because I felt like with Roger, all the assistant coaches would kind of take turns doing it. And then my first year as head coach, I didn't want to write it, so I was always trying to pawn it off on an assistant.
Right.
So, hey, who's going to ride the bus this week? And finally, about week 5 or 6, Scott came to me and he said, Jason, you need to be on the bus. I was like, what? Are you crazy? He goes, no, you are the face of the team. You need to take those kids to and from the game. And at that point, I still hated riding the bus.
Right.
But it made it a little more bearable, and he made me realize that, yeah, I need to be there with the team. I need to be their disciplinarian if they're screwing up on the bus. I need to be supporting them if they have questions, anything like that that's on the bus. So it became more of a positive the last few years. But I always appreciated Scott for that, because that would be something hard because I hated riding the bus.
Yeah. No, so luckily, Coach, in this case, it was a metaphor.
Yeah,
Having
exactly.
being on the right seat in the
Perfect.
bus. But I think we'll talk about this in a few minutes. But having a culture within the team that understands that there's going to be some role playing, right? Sometimes you have to play, your team needs you to play a certain role. Everybody needs to fill in certain spots to help the overall unit. And it may not be the best thing that you'll individually like, but it's what the team needs. And if everybody understands, well, I may have to do that, and they're all agreeable, that's only going to help the team in the long run, right?
Yep.
So let's talk about now. So now you're done handling all of the managing of players and coaches, and then now you have to start dealing with school administrators, parents, members of the community. How did you balance all of this? And then did one take priority over the other as far as like in season or out of season? Because, all right, you got all the players on the bus, coaches are on the bus. Now you got the people in the office, the parents and the community. How'd you handle all that?
Well, as an assistant coach under Roger, it was interesting because we always had the office staff watching our back in case we did something not very appropriate. And they would truly watch and pay attention and listen and put the fires out as they came.
Mm-hmm.
When I stepped up as a head coach, I remember I just remember the administration would manage the in season. So if students or athletes got in less trouble during season, they were happier than they could be. And then the fight started with the parents after season was over, trying to get the kids into the weight room, whether it be a student that thinks they're going to get a track scholarship and running track, not wanting to do squats because squats aren't going to help them during the season for track.
For a sport, right?
For their sport that they're currently in. And I'd always try to get them to do low weight, high reps to try to strengthen what their capabilities are. And first time they do it, they'd be sore. So they're complaining to the track coach. Track coach comes to me and says, "Oh, you can't have them do that."
Right.
Right. So that's always been interesting.
So did it change as far as like when you're dealing with parents and you're dealing with the administration and all of that? Was it more during the season, or was it more in the off season, or was it about the same? Or
parents were more in the off season.
Okay.
Because they felt like their kids out of season, they don't need to come to the weight room. They don't need to stick around afterwards. And then administration was more during the season.
Okay.
I felt
because they're checking for grades and eligibility, and so got suspended, or all of that good stuff.
Yeah, I did have one instance with the parents that I thought was very unique. One of our players had a bum shoulder. He was a good running back. He played running back for us, and he also played cornerback. Well, he didn't care for playing cornerback that much, but he never bothered to tell his mom this. So at the end of the game, we had pulled him out of playing corner about, I don't know, halfway through the third quarter. And at his request, we pulled him out. I didn't know it at the time, but the assistant coach, Manny, I think it was, pulled him out of the game. And so he was on the sidelines. And his mom came down and ripped me a new asshole by, "Why did you pull my kid out of the game? He's fine. He's not hurt anymore. You shouldn't be pulling him out of the game," and just chewed on me for a good 10 minutes. And then, I'm not realizing what happened because I just knew he was out on defense, which is fine because our other players stepped up and they played pretty well. And then afterwards, whoever the coach was, I don't remember if it was Manny or if it was you or who exactly it was, but they came over to me and they said, "Hey, he requested to come out." And I was like, I just wanted to go over to her and tell her what it was, but I couldn't do that because she had in her mind what was right.
Right.
And
it always seems like the parents don't always have the full story or the full equation.
Right.
And
yeah, definitely.
I've had them in my face about, how come you didn't give my kid playing time? How come he wasn't in there? And I said, why did he miss 2 days of practice this week? Where was he at? And he goes, I didn't know that. It's like, yeah, ask him that first.
Yeah.
So it's always tough with that kind of stuff.
It is.
Coach, I want to talk a little bit about the specifics of managing the game of football. We talked about managing human beings, the players, the coaches, parents, administration, all that good stuff. I had an opportunity, quick story. My first year of coaching in 1995 at Mission San Jose High School in Fremont. I was the head freshman football coach. Had a great time, just loved being a part of it. That first off season, went to my first coaching clinic over in Burlingame. And, we've now since there, we've been to lots of coaching clinics. And one of the first coaching breakout sessions I went in to listen to was none other than Bill Walsh, the head coach of the 49ers, legendary head football coach. And I still have the notes from that day. And it was dated February 3rd of 1996. I'm sitting in a room of maybe 20 football coaches. And I got my notebook out and I'm thinking, I'm going to draw up all these plays, these X's and O's. I'm going to take it back next season. I'm going to have all these plays that I got from Bill Walsh. We're going to have a great year. And I walked in and he said, let's talk about managing the game. And of course, initially I was like, what? I was a little disappointed, right? I wanted to see some West Coast offense. Yeah. I wanted to have some plays drawn up. But after I took these notes down, and now here we are years later, I read through this, and we're going to go through some of these because it's just so impactful when we think about some of the things we talk about, what it takes for a coach to manage a football team, right? So some of the things in here, he talks about players have to be fully dimensional. They have to be conditioned, skilled, have intensity, have fundamentals, have good communication, be compatible with each other, be team-oriented, and have a willingness to sacrifice, right? Our role as coaches is to bring all that together and orchestrate it. This is all Bill Walsh. And you think back to those teams, this is what he was doing with all those groups of people, right? Select appropriate positions. We just talked about that. Should he be a tackle? Should he be a tight end? Establish an environment in which role playing is understood. It's not a big shocker.
Yeah.
It's just an understood necessity, right?
Yep.
And that's just culture.
And to trust your coach that he's going to put you in the right spot where you can do the best job for the team.
This one really hit me as being surprising, to allow leadership to develop.
Yeah, that's interesting because you never know who the leaders are going to end up being on the team. Sometimes they're self-proclaimed, and sometimes they're actual true leaders, and that is indicative of how far the team's going to go too. And we'll talk about that in a minute too.
Yeah, and when I think about that, I look at it and go, sometimes I could be what stops it, right? And so I need to catch myself and go, whoa, I need to let this play out. Allow the leaders to develop. Allow that dynamic to occur.
Yeah.
Yeah. And don't stop it. Don't get in the way of it, right?
Yeah.
Identify fundamentals common to all. Organize and teach them. Identify skills related to each position and create a method to teach them. That to me is like some of those things. Some of the best drills we ever did was just out of necessity, right?
Yeah.
It's like, hey, we're horrible at tackling on the edge. So we would just, manufacture a drill that would just fix that, right? So we would like, here's what's happening that we need to fix. And we would just make something up to teach the skill to give them that muscle memory to fix it.
Right.
So, I mean, all of these things I look through and it's like, this is nuts. I mean, we still do this today. Coaches are going to be out there this off season and they're going to be doing this, all of this stuff. Here's the part I really want to get into. Develop a full dimensional game scenario. This naturally includes kicking, but in this case, prepare your squads for all eventualities. So he talks about contingencies in a game. Basic offense, short yardage, goal line, 3rd and 3, 3rd and 6, long yardage, 15 yards or more, last 3 plays of the game, 25 seconds left. You're inside the 10-yard line. Most likely, what are your run plays inside the 10? You're inside the 20. What are your pass plays inside the 20? You're backed up inside your own 5-yard line. 2-minute drill right before the half. 2-minute drill right before the game ends. This was a good one. 4 minutes with the lead. And I have an asterisk next to it, and he says, keep the snap count the same. Mistakes at this point is a killer. So don't change the snap count when you got 4 minutes with the lead, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
So
somebody jumps and all of a sudden, you're in trouble, yeah.
And so all of these things, you go, yeah, that all makes sense. But you just can't show up on Friday night and go, we'll be ready when that time comes. You have to prepare for all this, right?
Exactly.
So tell me a little bit about your philosophy, Coach, about the game contingencies and how you would prepare a team for this.
Well, I inherited a very positive call sheet from Roger Canepa, and then from there I developed my own and developed my own sequence of plays and how they come up. So I think that as it progresses through the week, different scenarios require different plays and different situations, and what's been successful, what hasn't been successful, what plays have I ran that have been successful that they're probably going to stop. There was a setup play for something else. And I think that takes me to Amador a couple years in a row, because we have the most simple play in the world was 7-go. And when Bill Baker would pull his hair out thinking about that play specifically, but we would run sweep enough to where everybody's flying to sweep, you run go behind it, and there's nobody there, and we get a 20-yard touchdown or a 15-yard touchdown.
Right.
To our best running back running behind the flow of it where everybody's going. And
where to the normal fan, it looks like just like a dive play right up the middle. There
right,
it goes.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. And I think we scored on it 4 times in 3 years. And it's always in the late third quarter into the fourth quarter when that play works. And we got to be friends at the coaches' clinics and coaching the All-Star game together. But that was always the joke between us was the simplest play we have is the one that scores the most points.
Right.
And it was just that situation called for that because we'd set it up so many times with other plays. So yeah, I think preparation for down and distance is huge. Time on the clock, I think, is huge. A 4-minute offense and a 2-minute offense. Mm-hmm. Halftime 2-minute offense is going to look a little bit different than a 2-minute offense down by 4,
right,
or whatever it might be.
One of the things Coach Walsh had on here that I wrote down as well too is he was adamant about practice schedules. He always had practice schedules, from everything from, we're stretching from this time to this time to water breaks to running back drill, every drill, everything was going to be documented because he, as a manager, he always wanted to go back and go, okay, let me look at this week. Let me look at the last 2 weeks. Let me look at this entire month and say, we've spent X amount of time on the short run game. We spent X amount of time on our long passing game. And with that statistics and with that data as a manager, he knew okay, well, we should be pretty good at this, and we're probably going to need a little work more on this, and let's schedule more time in this area and from now on moving forward. And so that just helped them with that. And that took me, fast forward with the Calaveras coaches. We always had practice schedules. We always knew what the goal was for that day, offense, defense, what we're going to run, what we're trying to get done. And so all that's pretty important as far as making sure that whatever happens on Friday night, which we don't know what's going to happen, those contingencies will come up, that we're going to be prepared for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I always wanted to develop a passionate and strong passing game. Yet whenever we would practice pass more than we would run, it would always seem like it'd take away from our run game. And we wouldn't. And Roger used to say, 2 out of 3 things that happen on a passing play are bad.
Right.
Only 1 is good. So what are the chances of something good happening?
Right.
1/3 of the time. So that actually got my attention later after I've been told so many times that, hey, we have to develop a passing game if we want to be successful to go deeper.
Right.
And I thought that was kind of interesting because whenever we would try to develop a passing game, then it would not be as successful. The other thing that hurt me, I think, in later in my career was I had a very strong goal line package, a very strong short yardage package. I was relatively screen heavy on 3rd and long. And those things teams started picking up on after they've had 2 or 3 years of films watching me call plays.
Right.
And that hurt us, I think,
Right.
as the later it went. Some of the double screen things they're doing now and some of the slip and bubbles I always wanted to try to develop, but those take a lot of time and a lot of meticulous design to where your offense knows exactly what that defense is going to react with when the ball snaps. So if they know where that guy's going to be, they can go block him. But if they don't know where he's going to be, or if it's off like 2 yards or something, they're going to be running to a space and there's not going to be anybody there to block. And then all of a sudden the play's blown up or whatever it might be.
It's funny you bring that up because I was talking with Coach Mosa, and my feeling was one of the toughest defenses to have to block against, or at least scheme against, with film, was just that 3-man front, because that meant that the rest of the defense were at depth when they're not up on the line. And one of the hardest things to do for offensive linemen, for offensive players, is to go run at depth to block a guy that's not necessarily going to be there when you get there, or he's going to be in a different spot. As opposed to just down blocking a guy that's right in the gap. That's simple and easy. So it's much harder to coach against those types of schemes. Yeah. So I can certainly see that. On the other hand, with the they know I'm going to run screen on third down. They know goal line, all that stuff. When you start to get that good at it, they know now you can start running fake plays off that. They think we're going to run this. Yeah. And you can kind of set them up for different stuff like that.
Yeah, so. And we used to run some sucker plays that were really big. We would give to the sweeper and fake the entire blocking of an interior play, and everybody's crashing down to stop the interior play, and the sweeper's running around the outside, up the sidelines.
Those backers are going, what the hell just happened?
Yeah. And even the defensive backs up, okay, good, they got the play, nice. Who's that guy running around the edge? That's a good fake, kid. Yeah, he's running into the end zone.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, those are fun.
So, Coach, there's so many things happening very fast during a football game. You got to worry about mentally, the time on the clock. What quarter is it? What's the score? How's the team performing thus far? What's been working? What hasn't been working? All of this, and you got 25 seconds to call play. How did you manage that and not lose your mind?
As a play caller, you really have to be 2 or 3 plays ahead of yourself. To where what play you called, the possibilities. It could be a 3-yard gain, could be a 6-yard gain, could break for a touchdown. And you need to know what that play is going to set up 3 or 4 plays later in a 4th and 1 situation down on the 30-yard line or something like that. So I really think that the longer you call plays, the better you get at planning ahead. Like just showing the fact in the Amador games when go worked so well because we ran sweep a lot. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of setup plays. My brother used to tease me, Terry, when he would announce, he'd call, if anything never worked, he'd call it a setup play because that's what I told him it was. And then if something worked, that was what it was set up.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that's the way it was set up.
I meant to do that.
Yeah, I meant to do that.
Exactly.
That's perfect.
Exactly.
Great call, huh?
So that's the main thing. Always worried about, I'm the play I'm calling right now at this moment. I thought about really 2 plays ago. Yeah. And I'm calling this play now. I'm already thinking a couple more plays down the road. So that's that play caller mentality.
Yeah, and that's the other thing about throwing the ball. If you throw the ball, what are the possibilities? No gain, interception, possibly a first down. That's a no-brainer to me.
Right.
You run that football.
So, Coach, let's move on a little bit here. I want to talk a little bit about how a lot of folks think that football starts in the fall, but coaches and players know that's not really the case, right?
Right.
So how did you go about navigating an off-season program at a small school when athletes play other sports and then still wanting to make sure that when, if they're not playing sports or where that season, their season's over, that there was something in place to get them prepared because, back then games weren't until September. Now they're in August, right? So now it's just like it happened so fast. What did you do as far as off-season program to get that going?
I was never very good at managing the off-season. I'd get anywhere from 3 to 5 players in the weight room through the winter because most of them are either wrestling, basketball, or going fishing or got a job. So anyway, so I was never really that good at it. I would try to demand it that they get there if they're not in another sport, and they kind of boycotted it. Well, the best thing that ever happened when I hired Hickman from over in Argonaut, he came over and he coached with us for a few years, and we were very successful. And we had one of the most talented teams we've ever had. End up second in league, losing the second round of the playoffs, I think. Most talented team we ever had, but they weren't the most bought in. Then the following year, he came to me and he said, "Jason, we have to do something about this. We can't let players come out that aren't completely bought in." And so I don't know if he talked to him or if this was totally the students doing, but one of our players the next year we anticipated being a great player was supposed to go up to Red Bluff for the entire summer. Going to miss all of our summer workouts for the summer.
Oh, wow.
And so we put in a place, and you can't really enforce this because it is a voluntary sport, but you could if you wanted to be an a-hole, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But he was going to be one of our best players, and we put in place, you're not here over the summer, you're not going to play. And so everybody kind of took that to heart, and this guy took it to heart as well. He decided, instead of going up and working on baling hay for his uncle or whatever it was he was supposed to be doing, he decided to stay. And this is part of what we talked about earlier about developing a leader, and how that person, because of his commitment to the program, showed everybody else that everybody else needs to be as committed as him, because, by God, we're going to do the best we could.
Right.
And that was probably I wouldn't say the least talented team, but it was down there a ways, but we had more success. I felt more successful at the end of that season because of those kids had bought in and all came together. And they did it. They did an amazing job in the off season. John was there pretty much the whole time, and I was there with them. But the more buy-in you have from leadership of the team, the better the team got. And that goes back to the year before that we didn't have leadership buy-in.
Right.
They were all complaining about having to come to the weight room. Oh, I have my weight room in the garage. I'm going to go work out there. Or my dad wants me to go here and work out.
Right. Or in Valley Spring, well, I'm at the gym.
I'm at the gym,
right.
Yeah. I'm at the gym.
Right.
Where they walk around and look at girls the whole time. But yeah.
That takes me back to 2010 when the last time the Calaveras was in a section championship game, right?
Yep.
And I think back to the summer prior to that season, and guys like Monty Wilson and Chris Ossery and
Eli Tom.
Garrett Bach and Eli Tom, and just the guys, they were the first ones there, the last one to leave, and just the work ethic that they put in that off summer and during that summer. And then lo and behold, look what happens later in the season, right? So
and I remember playing Escalon in the scrimmage, the very first game of the year. They're all leaning on their helmets, knee down on the sidelines, and our guys were like, yeah. They were fired up. But that was the last year I saw that. And then again, we saw it again in, I believe it was fall 2018, which was my last year coaching, when Hickman instilled this, hey, you're going to be here.
Right.
Leadership bought in, and we overachieved for what we should have been.
Right. So if you're out there listening, guys, a lot of the current players out there listening to these podcasts, have some leadership, have some accountability, and it all starts in that summer program.
Yep.
Which leads me to my next question. What's the most important aspect of the off-season program, in your opinion?
Buy-in and team. Develop a team in the off-season. You can develop it during season, but you're not going to reach it until you're halfway through the season, which means you're 1 or 2 games into league, which means you may have lost those 2 games of league. Buy-in. It has to be buy-in early, buy-in as a team, buy into what your coaches are telling you. Just and develop that team atmosphere to where you would do whatever it took for the guy next to you.
Right.
And that's developed in the off season. You can't do that during practice.
Yeah, and they're not your teammates just in the fall. They're your teammates all year round, all season round, summer, everything.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah. Coach, if you were able to wave a magic wand and eliminate all of the potential conflicts that I know that coaches get when it comes around to the off-season program, and you were able to just do all that, what would that perfect off-season program look like?
It looked like 4 days a week, all the way through school, maybe give them a week off at the end of school, and then come back with a summer program that's also 4 days a week, weight room at least two with us, and then one outside of here. Meetings, be putting in plays all through the summer. And then once we get out to actual practice, we start running plays, start developing timing, those type of things. And you have now you have 2 weeks basically till your first scrimmage. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a mad rush to get there, but you'd already have install done, and then now you're running at a full speed,
right?
And against a mock defense. The other thing that buy-in can actually give you is a better scout team. Because if we talked about the role play and we talked about those second string guys,
right?
Sometimes that second string guy may be the guy standing behind the offense, saying, "Oh no, I'm second string. I'm gonna trade off with him." No, we need the best players we could get over on defense to be able to service our offense, so our offense knows what game speed's all about.
Right.
And the another irritating thing to me was always that second string guy trying to fight for a first string position goes hard, and first stringers get pissed at him for going hard. And,
right.
And it's like, no, that's not the way it works.
Competition is healthy.
Competition is healthy during practice. Yeah.
Yeah. And you never know. I mean, football, guys roll ankles. They get twisted up. They get bruised.
Broken finger, four-section game, Josiah Lozano.
You're always one play away from having to be that guy.
Oh, yeah.
And you can't just turn the on switch on. You have to already have been getting the reps in to be prepared for that moment.
Yeah, at full speed, whether it be offense, defense, whatever it might be.
Yeah. Well, Coach, we're running out of time here. Is there any last words you want to send out around this to everybody as far as, managing football? I appreciate you coming in and talking with us about all this stuff. This is good stuff, all your years of experience around the game. So we know you got a lot of knowledge around there. Any last words you want to send out to the people?
Yeah, just trust your coach. I know we had a couple years there. I think personally, Calaveras football was affected the most by COVID because student players started going out and getting jobs, and then we had a weird season there where it was in the spring only and didn't have a lot of draw for that. And then we had a limited season that season. And then all of a sudden those kids that could have played were working. All of a sudden they got a car payment, they got a girlfriend, they got whatever it is.
Right.
They're working, and now they have a job that they can't do. So buy in and enjoy your time as a high school athlete, because it's not going to be there forever, but the memories last forever.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Well, folks, I want to thank all of you out there for listening. Thanks to Jason Weatherby for taking the time, I know, out of his busy schedule to be here today. Remember, if you have any questions that you'd like us to address or have any comments that you'd like for us to air in a future episode, follow us on Instagram at Let's Talk Football with Coach Val, or you could always shoot us an email at gilbertvaltierra@gmail.com. Coach, thanks again.
Thank you.
And until next time, we are out.
And it's intercepted. It's intercepted by number 22. That's Clifton. He's got the left edge. Turns on the Jets. Still on his feet. Touchdown, Calaveras. What a play. Up to a running back. That's Ferrante over to the right side. He comes back up the middle. He's got room. One man to beat. He turns on the Jets. There he goes. Touchdown, Calaveras. What a play.